I found some old notes I wrote on some paper a while ago after I left my ex. I didn't write it to anyone in particular, I just wrote it. I left in 2008, and 10 years later, the rereading of it still hurts so very much. This is from December 1st, 2008. Feeling like throwing in the towel. Trapped, lost, hurt, angry at him. Life is not fair. I know I sound like a child, but it's how I feel. I still think the world would be better off without me, that it would be best to give up. But I love my kids too much to do that. I have no idea where they'd go anyway, and what about the bad that could happen to them? Here is my story and why I felt like I did. Welcome, my name is Anne, and I want to share a story. Not just any story, my family's story. I share to inform, I share to educate, I share so others can understand. I don't share for sympathy or pity. Trust me, I throw some really good pity parties for one on my own sometimes. I share to hopefully make a difference in people's life. I share to help, to save, and to spread the word. My story. I was abused for many years. There was physical, emotional, and mental abuse. When you're told for many years that you're stupid, you're a fat cow, you're worthless, you're no good, you'll never be anything, and no one will want you, you believe it. I spent many years with my abuser because I believed the lies he filled my head with. Because I didn't have the help to get out. Because I thought I needed to be with him for the kids' sake. I knew it was me that needed to change. If I would do A, B, and C, he would be happy with me and love me, and all would be right. Well, I did A through Z and redid the alphabet over quite a few times. Things changed, sometimes, but only for a bit. I started dating my abuser in 1989 while still in high school. I signed up for the Navy, and before I left for boot camp, he convinced me to have a baby with him. While I was in the hospital trying not to go into early labor, he was out with other females. The physical abuse started shortly after I had our baby and moved in with him. I left him for a bit, but he sweet-talked me into coming back. He was sorry for hitting me and for kidnapping our son while his friend kept me locked upstairs. He promised to never do it again. A few months later, our son got a lump on his neck, and we discovered our 11-month-old had cancer. While I spent all of my days and nights caring for a dying child at Children's Hospital, he spent time seeing other people. Before I found out about the other girlfriends, I became pregnant. My beautiful daughter was born just 2 short weeks before her big brother died at 22 months old. Shortly after he died, he became more angry and yelled more, but there still wasn't any more physical abuse at this point. He also cheated again. I was told by people it was because he was immature and grieving. I caved in and I decided I should stay with him. Despite the abuse and cheating, I still decided to marry him. I was working in a group home and making more money than him. About a week after we married, he talked me out of staying at that job. I became pregnant with our 3rd child, and we moved into another place. I was over an hour away from my family. I had moved from my friends too. I had my 3rd child, a daughter, and we moved again. We ended up having to stay at other people's houses. I got pregnant again. We ended up moving yet again. He constantly told me I was fat. He made it clear that I had too many kids for anyone to ever want to be with me. By the time I had our 5th baby, he started to get physical again with me. He'd tell me to go to church. And then when I'd get home, he'd hit me. One time after he did that, he also disconnected the phone line from my house. I left. I went home the next day and he said, I saw you at so-and-so's house. I followed you all the way there. He wasn't mad about where I went. He just wanted to know that he was the one in control. He lost his right to drive, but yet he still did. Once in a while, he would have me drive and he'd be screaming at me the whole time until I would cry and he would tell me I was being a baby. He would say he didn't drive wrong, everyone else did. He never thought the laws applied to him. He was above the laws and the rules. He made sure I understood that. He proved it over and over again by his actions. In 2000, we bought our first home. We moved far from my family and my church family. We moved in and he started to go out more and more after work. I tried to beg him to come home more, but the more I begged, the more he went out. On my 30th birthday, he took my gift back from me, and he hit me over and over, took all the money, the ATM card, and the checks, and told me to leave. I did. Then he spent the next few weeks buying me things, taking me out to dinner, flowers and cards with wonderfully written words he wrote on it, and it was a huge honeymoon stage. I again thought he would change for the better, for good. I had my sixth child at this point. I spent the next year hearing what a horrible person I was, how fat I was, and how stupid and worthless I was. I knew he was right. I had it in my mind that I was no good. In 2002, the physical abuse got worse and worse. I remember one time he shoved me into the kitchen wall. I knew it was my fault. He also would lock me out of our bedroom and would tell me I didn't deserve to sleep in a bed. I went out one night, and when I got home, he screamed at me and started to hit me. He then got me on the floor and he started to choke me. I remember my oldest son coming in and seeing this and running back to his room, and he tried to climb out of the window to go get help. I looked at my husband's face and begged him to stop. I looked into his eyes. I will never forget the dead, cold stare that I saw in his eyes. There was nothing there. I turned my head sideways and started to pray. I knew I was going to die that night, but God had other plans. Suddenly he stopped and he got up and walked out the door. I took my kids and left. We stayed at my parents'. He said he wouldn't give me any money for food. He froze the bank account and I bounced a check. He also had someone come to the house to watch me through the window. I went to a shelter. At this point, I was allowing him to see the kids. I went home to pick up the kids one day and he begged me to stay and said he wanted to be a family. I said no. I told the kids to get into the van. He ran and pulled out a wire. I couldn't start the van. I was so mad. He then started to beat me right in the front yard. A car stopped and people got out to help. A neighbor called the police. He took off before they got there, but they ended up finding him and arrested him. And he blamed me for the work he missed because of being arrested. I went to court to see what they would do. They had him on a TV monitor, and I remember the fear I had when I saw him on that monitor and how bad I shook and how the tears flowed down my face. I had also asked the judge that day to allow the kids and I to stay at the house and not him. And I also went and got a PPO, which is a personal protection order. After I got the PPO and was allowed to stay at the house with the kids, he tried all kinds of things to get back at me. He shut off the power. It was in his name. I got it back on. He shut off the water and put a block on it, meaning he was the only one who could turn it back on. At the courthouse, when his lawyer heard about this, she walked out on him. He called CPS and made a false report. They came out and found nothing wrong and closed the case. I changed the locks on the door, and he climbed through the window and left a love letter on my pillow. I would hear noise outside my house at all hours of the night. I heard his voice and laughter one night. It woke me up, and I screamed, "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me." He sent me an email with jokes about killing a mother-in-law, and while I know there's all kinds of jokes out there about this, I felt sick to my stomach. I asked my lawyer about this and was told that this violated the PPO. He was again arrested. I was away from him for 6 months. He used the church to win me back. He had them believe he was changed and that he loved me and the kids. I slowly let him back in my life. He was good again for a bit. He took us on vacations, bought us stuff, and promised love. The church people were scammed by him too. I listened to them and to him and took him back. He was so nice for a very short time. And then he started to spend money on 3 things: poker games, drugs, and comic books. He lost his good-paying job. His drug use increased. We lost our house, and we had to move into his dad's house, who had died. He again made it clear to me that because I was stupid, no one would ever put up with me or want me. We moved into my father-in-law's house with our 5 kids. His drug use was out of control. He worked odd jobs. I got a job and he took all my cash and spent it on comics and drugs and poker games. I tried to hide the money and he would tell me what I owed him. The power got shut off. It was cold and we weren't sure what to do. We went and talked to our pastor and his wife. They said we could stay at the church. While we were staying there, he still kept on using drugs, and I finally went to my pastor and his wife and begged for help. I couldn't stand what he was doing to us as a family. He went into rehab at our pastor's request. He was also told he could no longer stay at our church because he had sold drugs from there. He was told the kids and I would be there, but he wasn't allowed until he changed. He stayed for a very short time and then he left rehab. He tried everything he could to get back in our life. He threatened that he was going to kill himself. My friends and I went looking for him that one night, but he was okay. He said he had stopped doing drugs, which was a lie. He told the church I was cheating on him, another lie. My pastor and his wife protected us and fed us and warned me to stay away. While living at the church, I started to become more aware of how this is not how we should be treated. I wanted my life and the life of my kids to change. He kept trying to make a way back in. I allowed him to see the kids after school at the school playground for about an hour when school would get out. He then called me one night and said I was going to lose the kids and he would have them because the church he was going to had gotten an apartment. I was crying and my girls heard me and begged me to talk to me. I didn't want to, and at first I was upset. Then they asked again. I went inside, and they told me the most horrible thing a mom could ever hear. They told me he had molested them growing up. I said, "Are you telling the truth?" They said yes. I called my pastor and said, "Please come to the church right now." I led my girls to his office, and we proceeded to talk about it together. My girls, my pastor, and his wife and I. We went to the police. We went to CPS. CPS interviewed him and came back to me and said he doesn't look like the type that would molest a child. I didn't know there was a look. On November 7th, 2008, I took the money I had saved and got a little place up north after staying in a shelter. In 2010, after almost a year-long court battle, he lost his rights. The judge couldn't charge him for what he did because it didn't happen in the county I was living in. The CPS worker from my county even tried everything he could to get him charged. Here's something I wrote about how domestic violence affects a child, and I would like to read it now. Domestic violence in your child. I write these words to you. I write them not as a professional or someone with a degree, but as a survivor of domestic violence and as a mom of 5 children who were part of this messed up world I lived in. Please hear me out. The children you gave birth to, the ones you love very much, will be affected by the abuse. I beg you, I plead with you, I need you to listen and to understand. Please don't go back. The things I deal with are something no parent should have to, let alone a child. Mental illness, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, anger issues, borderline personality disorder, and depression, just to name a few. I have awakened to my teen screaming as she runs down the hall to find me to comfort her after a nightmare. I have walked out of a mental hospital after leaving my daughter there. I felt so empty inside when I left her there. I cried and cried. The more times I had to leave her there, I had less tears and more anger came, knowing that some of this could have been prevented. I have sat in the back of ambulances and by hospital beds in an ICU after numerous suicide attempts by the children. I have watched helplessly as my child had no idea who she was, or no clue who I was, or even that she was in her own home. It was all a side effect of one of her medications. The children did not have a good sense of boundaries, and sometimes they would share too much information with anyone who would listen. There are times they treated me with no respect at all, a lesson they learned from my ex. They have cut themselves. It's a self-injury. It's not a suicide issue. I have spent countless hours in a community mental health building for meetings with therapists and or doctors to try to get my children the help they need. The list could go on, but I just wanted to get a few words out there, a few words to you. I want you to understand that by going back and or staying with an abuser is a mistake for you and your children. Children who live with violence in their home face many risks and challenges that can last throughout their life. Please leave. Don't go back. I shared the bad with you you'd be aware of how DV affects everyone in the family, how it can damage the children, and now I want to share my good since I left in 2008. I have found out that real love does not hurt. I have a home filled with laughter and love, and we are safe. I have my old friends back. I also have realized that it wasn't my fault. I wasn't to blame. My two oldest and I, we help those that are being abused and other survivors. And the best part, all my children have come so far. 2 years ago, my ex-new wife-to-be told me in a message I need to shut my mouth. My story was causing problems in her life. A few weeks after they got married, he started robbing banks and now sits in prison. I will not shut my mouth. I will share and try to save others. The children need you. The ones being abused need you. They are silently screaming, we are here, suffering, needing the community's help. So please, please help them. Find their voice. And if you're being abused, please get help and leave. Thank you.